Today's video brings me to Tampa, Florida, the historic Ybor City part of Tampa. Welcome everybody, this is Hugo with Signs of the Pastime, and today is a good day because we're talking baseball. On today's video, I'm going to be going into a little Tampa baseball history, where it started, who it started with, and we're going to talk about it. A man named Alfonso Ramon Lopez, better known as Al Lopez, Baseball Hall of Famer. We're going to go into his past, where he grew up, where he lived, and show some historic landmarks that are left here, showing people a little bit of baseball past, baseball history. So let's get into it. Tampa's baseball history began right here in Ybor City. In the late 1800s, many immigrants were moving into this area because Ybor was a thriving little town and it was completely run by immigrants. The Lopez family was one of those that came here from Cuba. They were ready to start a better life here in America. Al's dad, Modesto, was actually a tabaquero, a cigar maker, and that was the main industry here in Ybor. There were lots of cigar factories everywhere, employing thousands of people, and life was really good here in Ybor. But Al did not want to follow in his dad's footsteps. He didn't like the smell of tobacco leaves on his dad all the time, and he just wanted to do something else. And he did come to love baseball. But how, you were wondering? Well, soon after the cigars began being made, organized baseball followed, and they played lots of baseball here. Tampa's first love was actually baseball. So being in Ybor, surrounded by all these old buildings, it's a reminder that not only of Ybor's industrial past and its Latin roots, but it's also its rich baseball past. Although Ybor City is known for its nightlife nowadays, there are still reminders of the past, like this Columbia restaurant, a Spanish restaurant, still the oldest operating one in the state of Florida. And as you can see from the roosters walking around, the old buildings in Ybor, it's a good blend of the past and the present. And today we will talk about that past, about what once was and still remains. And what doesn't remain here any longer is the house that sat here. It was Al Lopez's house location, his childhood home, the home he grew up in and lived in with his family. It was right here on 12th Avenue. In this regular residential neighborhood in Ybor City, as you can see the old homes, it looked like that. It was a 2-story home. He was one of 9 children, so they needed a bigger house. But it was moved from here. As you can see, there's some empty lots. The city of Tampa had them removed through a I-4 widening project there, and they were taken and moved somewhere else.
Transportation moved the house of hometown legend Al Lopez. The process of moving it at another house actually started last night.
Al Lopez Jr. grew up in this home with his family in the 60s, but when it existed a mile away. They were tucked side by side on 19th Street. They're destined to become museums.
I think it's a kind of a signal or a reflection of what Tampa was back in the old days and how important baseball was to this community.
And here's the house as it sits today, the Tampa Baseball Museum at the Al Lopez House, right here on 19th Street. Looking as beautiful as ever, except without the second story there, but beautiful looking building. And close by is actually where Al Lopez got his first job. A young 16-year-old Al Lopez began working right here at the Ferlita Bakery, and he was a bread deliverer. He delivered the hot bread. So he would go around these neighborhoods saying, "Pan caliente," just like he is here on his baseball card. Well, it's probably what got him ready for life as a manager in major leagues. And so you see the bakeries right there, and you look over, and there's the Tampa Baseball Museum right there. The Al Lopez house, so close by, right in his old neighborhood, his old stomping grounds where he would deliver hot Cuban bread. Here we are inside the museum, and it is beautiful inside. They do such a good job highlighting the history of baseball in Tampa and going into different players like these Latin stars, Adolfo Luque and Al Lopez of Cuban descent. They were the only Spanish-speaking stars in the big leagues at the time, and that's because back then baseball had a color barrier, which was in place until 1947 when Jackie Robinson broke that. But before that, these Cuban stars, if they were too dark, they weren't allowed to play in the big leagues. So they would stay in Cuba or go to play in the Negro leagues like Martin Dihigo, Luis Tiant Sr. Those guys would not be allowed to play in the big leagues, but they were big leaguers nevertheless. They were major league stars for sure. And here you see a display donated by the Ted Williams Museum, Kansas City Monarchs. You see a baseball autograph right there, and along with this cap, and you see Buck O'Neill's beautiful signature right there on the cap. Great history. And here we have some items like Pete Alonso's game-worn cleats, which is pretty cool. And throughout the museum, they have bats and balls and jerseys displayed. I thought this was a pretty cool display of Major League Baseball player cards they put. Some of these cards, I probably would have put something a little different, but I mean, it's cool that they're highlighting baseball cards. They have a cool baseball quiz game. Like here's an example. And some of the questions, if you know Tampa baseball history, you better get these. Some of them anybody could get, but a few of these, like this one here, this was a tricky one. These guys all played for San Diego, but we got to go with a guy that belongs in the Hall of Fame, Steve Garvey. That's right. And here we see Al Lopez, and I had to bust out my autograph Al Lopez card for this. I have that card autograph, and there it is, which is pretty cool. Got to highlight the autograph collection. And I have another one here, if I can get it out and show that one, from 1960. Al Lopez right there. He signed it on the side. Pretty cool. And speaking of autographs, they had this awesome display of autographed baseballs, and they go in chronological order, starting with Al Lopez. Some of the stars that came through Tampa. Right here we see Tony La Russa, Hall of Famer, and Lou Piniella, who I think will be a future Hall of Famer, and they played together. Steve Garvey, as I mentioned. And you just go through all these guys made the major leagues. There's 89 total that have made the major leagues so far. So Tampa has a rich baseball history. There's Wade Boggs, one of my favorite players as a child. Dwight Gooden, Doc Gooden, was a legend here and great career. Luis Gonzalez and Tino Martinez, Kenny Rogers, and Gary Sheffield. There was a nice stretch right there of guys making the major leagues out of Tampa. There's the newest Hall of Famer, Fred McGriff, Dave Magadan, great ball player, Derek Bell. As you can see, these are all pretty good players. Carl Everett was a decent player, and Brad Radke was a good pitcher. Let's see who else we have here. Ozzie Timmons was pretty good, and Kevin Cash, the current manager of Tampa Bay Rays. We see here Matt Joyce with the Tampa Bay Rays, was a good player. Lance McCullers Jr. right now with the champions. Houston Astros, Jose Fernandez went through high school here. And we see Kyle Tucker, who's a star in the big leagues now with the Astros. And, of course, Pete Alonso. And the question is, who's next? There's the cards on display again with Al Lopez in the back. That was a pretty cool shot, I thought. And, we just see here more display. This is a picture of the old Tampa ballpark that's now at the University of Tampa. And back then it was segregated. It's actually a picture of Jackie Robinson at bat. And there you are. It was the winter home of the White Sox and the Redlegs, which are the Cincinnati Reds. Here's some great shots of Al as a manager for the White Sox. El Señor. He definitely had the respect of his ball players as a no-nonsense guy. Ran a tight ship. And that's what made him get into the Hall of Fame. He was not only a great player, but a great manager. The first Hall of Famer out of Tampa, first ball player out of Tampa, and the second Latino to ever make it into the Hall of Fame, right after Roberto Clemente, Al Lopez. Say cheese! Why did the chicken cross the road? To get to the baseball museum. Here we are on the campus of the Jesuit High School in Tampa, where many baseball greats have gone through. Of course, Al Lopez, Lou Piniella, Lance McCullers Jr., Brad Radke, Dave Magadan, and Pete Alonso, just to name a few. All came through here. This is where they got their start, at the Jesuit High School in Tampa. Beautiful campus. Well, let's take a look around. This is the baseball field. Of course, it's been renovated, but many greats played through here. Al did drop out of high school, so he didn't finish. He got his start at 16. He started pretty young, but this is the campus. This is the baseball field at the Jesuit High School, where many Tampa natives got their start. And here at the campus, they have a cool little museum that displays all the players that have gone through the system. Lou Piniella there in Class 61, upholding the Tiger tradition. The Jesuit High School Tigers. Rich baseball history. Across the street from the high school sits Al Lopez Park. So we see a statue here of honoring Mr. Lopez as Tampa's native son. He is a local legend here, and rightly so, as he inspired many young men to pursue a life in baseball, showing them that a young kid from Ybor City could make it. And this park now, as you can see, massive park here in the middle of the city, is named after Al. And right there across the street is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Stadium, Raymond James Stadium, which was once the site of Al Lopez Field. And Al got to manage his Chicago White Sox for a few years here in spring training. And funny story is that one time, Al got ejected out of a game. And he told the umpire, "You can't eject me. This is my own stadium." Eventually, football came into Tampa, and they built the Tampa Stadium right next to Al Lopez Field. But it wasn't long before they saw that baseball was no longer going to be there. So Al Lopez Field was demolished in 1989 after 33 years of service. And new Raymond James Stadium, as you can see there in the foreground, was built on the site of the old Al Lopez Field. And that's what it looks like today. You can still see the outline there on the top of the screen of the old Tampa Stadium. So much history, so much happened right here on this site, including November 18th, 1963, where the president, John F. Kennedy, came to speak here at Al Lopez Field just 4 days before he was assassinated in Dallas, Texas. It all happened right there. A little closer look at where the stadium once sat. And unfortunately, baseball was no longer planned to be here, so they looked for a different place, and it ended up being in St. Pete, where eventually the Tampa Bay Rays would call their home. And all that's left is, for professional baseball, it's right across the street from Raymond James Stadium, what was once Legends Field, now known as George Steinbrenner Field, home of the Yankees. We're here at George Steinbrenner Field, spring home of the New York Yankees, who we all know were our dominant team for many years. And from 1949 to 1964, the Yankees won 13 out of 15 pennants. Only 2 years they were not able to win the pennant in the American League, and that was thanks to Al Lopez led teams, the 1954 Indians and the 1959 Go-Go White Sox. So when the Yankees saw Al, they weren't too happy. He broke their run there of dominance.
Yankees lose. Yankees lose.
That's right. The Yankees lose. We can see here, got some games going on. I don't know if those are minor leaguers or a local team. I don't know. Look at all those baseballs. Well, that wraps it up for this episode of Sons of the Pastime, talking about Al Lopez, El Señor, and a little bit of history here from historic Ybor City. where it's known for its nightlife, but now you know it for its baseball past.
I want to thank you for the proudest and happiest moment of my life. Great to be here. Thank you.